Good evening, everyone. It's 5:01, and we'll go ahead and call the Tuesday, January 16th meeting of the Utility Service Board to order. First of all, if any of the board members have any personal or financial conflict with any of the issues or individuals on the agenda, then please be sure to recuse yourself during those portions of the meeting. First, let's begin with petitions and communications. First, we've got the Lake Lemon Conservancy presentation from Adam Casey. Thank you. Welcome, Adam. And just so you know, and for everyone, the microphones are just for our CATS folks, so you will not hear yourself in the room, but we'll all hear you.
All right, thank you. Recognize a couple of you. My name is Adam Casey. I'm the district manager with the Lake Lemon Conservancy District. For those that don't know, we have a 50-year lease with the City of Bloomington Utility and manage for water quality and recreation. This is more of a communication, kind of a discussion starter too for some of our future projects. And really just wanted to give an update on some of the things that have been going on recently. And I think you'll be happy to see them and some of the progress that we have been making. First of all, this is a image of Lake Lemon on the eastern edge where Bean Blossom Creek comes in. This is an image in the early spring. We have a lot of sediment that comes into Lake Lemon. That's our number one issue is the sediment management and then trying to retain water volume. So we started the Lake Lemon Sediment Management Project in the early 2000s, and we're continuing on that. The purpose is really to manage the lake and enhance wetland functionality, enhance and maintain recreation, then increase the longevity of the lake. In this first couple slides, I'll just kind of go through a little bit of history and then where we are at. So, history of sedimentation. This is an image from a 1974 report from Army Corps and some other areas that just show the Lake Lemon split up when they're looking at the longevity of the lake. So back in this 1974 image, they estimated about 40,000 yards of sediment coming into Lake Lemon per year. And the east end, they had a nominal lifespan or usable lifespan of about 80 years. And I'm not sure if there is a laser on this, but those dashed marks on the right-hand side are what they call the east end past that. That is all gone now. The nominal lifespan has long passed, probably 15 years ago. Those peninsulas on the north and south just have access channels now that are in those areas, so there really is no water capacity, and that's kind of the line in the sand that we're drawing for maintenance. We recently worked with Christopher Burke and a couple other engineering firms to look at actual sediment loading that's going on in Lake Lemon. With those initial estimates about 40,000, those are way off. What we've actually found between 2014 and 2019 is about 136,000 yards of sediment coming in to the lake per year, which is a massive amount, and it's very hard to manage, but I think we are getting to that point. A couple of images that we do have these are from that sediment transport study looking through the different bathymetric. These are in the 1970s showing the depth. That white area is less than 5 foot. And as we move through these images towards our 2019 bathymetric, which is measuring the depth of the lake, you can see these white shallow areas moving further west and the disappearance of those darker gray areas, which are filling in from sediment. Not a huge surprise. From the aerial views, if we look at that peninsula in the middle, that kind of looks like an upside down Africa. You can see this 1963 to 1998 kind of minimal growth of the delta there in vegetation. As we jump to this 2007, we look at that same peninsula, you can see all this vegetation area that's popping up north of there, pretty much zero depth. 2015, you can see again some more land forming. 2019, continuing to move past that, so this is rapidly forming. You don't notice it initially because you're underwater, and then as soon as this vegetates, I mean, it's very noticeable. And then actually 2023 this year in November, and this is our Lotus maintenance line. That's kind of where we're drawing the line in the sand that we want to try to maintain with our projects. And you can actually see above that peninsula where there's a straight cut line, that's our barge. We're doing hydraulic dredging this year. So our project evolution, Prior to my time, and I've been managing since 2015, I was a lake biologist a couple years prior to that. Our overarching goals, which is also our goals of the lease of the city, is maintaining water quality and recreation potential. We started in-house operation in 2009. Between 2009 and 2020, we actually had in-house barge operation. During that whole time span, we averaged about 10 to 11,000 cubic yards removed of sediment per year, which essentially just maintained these access channels along the eastern coves and where the homes are. And then we've also been linear or stabilizing the shoreline, over 15,000 linear feet stabilized. So we've done this all in-house with some layer grant money from DNR, Lake and River Enhancement, early on. The rest is through the taxpayers at Lake Lemon. So after we did our sediment transport studies, we realized we're not even keeping up or making an impact with this. We're moving 10,000 yards a year. We're looking at 120 plus coming in per year. So what we actually did was work with Shrewsbury and Christopher Burke and came up with a management plan in 2019. All these different images are little aspects that we thought of. The big zones in the open lake, 1 through 5, were dredging zones just so we could segment and monitor what we were looking at. The other stuff in the east, we're looking at opening up old creek channels, kind of enhancing the flow of water through the wetlands to capture sediment, how we can best slow down the sediment and then capture it in those areas. What we ultimately found out from our sediment transport studies and with Christopher Burke is that we're really not going to capture sediment any faster than that existing delta is doing, so we need to focus on the dredging. Kind of our most cost effective is to remove that sediment once it lands there. So in 2019, we purchased a 13-acre plot of land with the taxpayer dollars on the south shore of Lake Lemon to kind of start our sediment management project with the hydraulic dredging. We sold a $1 million bond, and then as well when the markets were really low, to fund this initial land purchase and then kick off this initial hydraulic dredging project and the creation of our disposal basins. This was the design of the disposal basin before we built it, about 136,000 yards of sediment storage on this east side. Where that red square is, that was a valley, which we're actually able to store some of our sediment there at lower cost and not have to move the earthwork so far. So this is our initial basin that we did. This is the inside of the basin when it was completed in February 2022. It's hard to tell here, but those walls are about 37 to 40 feet high around the rim. It's about 7 acres in that. So that is kind of what that 130,000 yards look like. We initiated the first hydraulic dredging project in 2022 as well, and it ran through last year. Here's some more images of us filling up that basin. I mean, from completely empty to sediment filling in. This was in November of this past year. And then as of December, we had actually filled in that entire basin with this. So we were able to accomplish in about 15 months the amount of dredging that we had done since 2009. So an entire order of magnitude more efficiency, also an entire order of magnitude cost as well with that $1.2 million cost. As we move in, kind of by the numbers, we were able to reclaim approximately 40 surface acres of lake. This is right where Bean Blossom Creek comes in. On average, the depth there was about 2.5 feet. So we've cut all that to 5.5, 6 foot plus to maintain boatable area. So that's where this first project got us. As we move forward into our 2024 project, we actually just awarded another $1 million bid with a dredging company to continue our hydraulic dredging. Over the past 2 years, we have doubled our tax on the lake residents, and we have earmarked $425,000 per year for these sediment maintenance projects. So this next year, these were our initial disposal basins. On the right was the one that we used. On the left here is actually a overflow pond that's connected by small culverts to Lake Lemon on the southeast side of the lake. And this is where we're going to be focusing our next part of the project for dredging. The biggest issue that we have out there is, besides money, is where do we put the sediment? And it's very tough. We're in ravines. There's not much farmland around there. So this is, again, back to our elements map. On the bottom, there's kind of a pond that's highlighted there. That is where we'll be starting our 2024 project. One of the reasons we loved this area is because the hazardous algal blooms, the blue-green algae, which is a very hot topic now, are just off the charts in this pond. There's like minimal connectivity. There's no wave action, no vegetation. So our plan is to fill this in during this 2024 project. And then per our permitting and per our plan, what we'll actually do is do a constructed emergent wetland. So we will plant that, so it'll actually be a treatment wetland. It'll still allow the flood buffering capacity, but it'll be vegetated to take up the nutrients and actually clean the water coming through. So we're both accomplishing the dredging and then enhancing water quality with this. What we're looking at moving on from this, after this project, the permitting for the hydraulic dredging itself is not an issue. The biggest issues that we have are finding the disposal sites as well. Once this project is done in 2024, we'll plant it in 2025, and then the next issues are raising money to reuse both that basin that we had built. We overbuilt that. The goal is to get rid of that sediment in there. Unless we can work with some partners to remove that, it's almost more expensive to get rid of it out of the basin because you're trucking it than just pumping it in there. After that, which is going to take a while to get rid of that sediment, we are continuing to look forward, and the ultimate goal of the Conservancy, I think, to have an efficient and ongoing project for the management out there is to have 2 disposal sites on the land-based. So we've raised taxes. We're actually working with the community foundations, and both Brown and Monroe County are raising money to try to create an endowment so we don't have to completely rely on the taxpayer base, but make some money to continue this ongoing maintenance. So one of the things that we're looking at, besides telling about this project, is I would like to start the conversation about utilization of some other City of Bloomington property out there. We have had agreements in the past for some of our disposal sites. This piece of property, and I obviously don't expect any answers tonight, but just kind of show you what we've been doing and kick off a conversation, is on the east end of the lake on the North Shore side. It's currently just a grass field that's open. There is about 7 acres of usable land in this area. It is City of Bloomington property. And what we'd love to do is pursue conversations about utilizing this as another disposal site. So we could get into an area where we are continually pumping into one while we're dredging out that sediment and then clearing out the other, and then we can switch on an annual basis. So I don't know if there's any questions about the projects or what we're doing. We haven't been out here for a long time, so really just wanted to give an update and continue the relationship going. So if you have any questions, discussions, let me know. And if not, thank you for listening to our projects out there.
Thank you so much for all of those great details. I learned a lot of things about Lake Lemon that I did not know, and I'm glad you were able to find better solution for the dredging, and I can't believe those walls were 40 foot high, that you stored all that. We had just previously, prior to this meeting, had our property and planning subcommittee meeting and discussed dumping and site things like that. So that's very much on our radar. Is that property that you highlighted a CBU property, or is it city, or we're not sure?
It's City of Bloomington is what it says on the GIS. But I think ultimately if we were to utilize that with our 50-year maintenance contract with CBU, we would need the utilities board to kind of champion us with the City of Bloomington to utilize that, to show that we are enacting our 50-year lease engagements, kind of the productivity that we're having, and then moving forward. So I know it may be ultimately a Bloomington decision, but I think we would need to kind of talk with the utilities board to champion that discussion with us.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Do any of their board members have a question? Amanda?
Thank you so much for sharing all this information.
Yes.
The first area that you were using for the sediment dumping, it looked to be that there weren't a lot of homeowners around it. It was very much kind of landlocked in there, correct?
Correct.
This second one, this last one that you just showed before you came up, runs along North Shore, and there's a lot of housing there. So it may be 2 it may be premature to start that discussion, but have there been any concerns from homeowners in that area?
So really, it's been great feedback about what we have been doing. It's very visual with the dredging that's going on. That actual area on the northern side does not have any direct homeowners along that side. On South Shore, there's not any development, or on North Shore, sorry, until you go down the roads a little bit. And then on either side, east or west, it's forested right now. And then as you head north on that Possum Trot Road right there, there's a couple of cabins that are way back in there, but it's not in like a very populated district, or there's no density of housing at all there. Yeah, yeah.
Questions or comments? No? Okay, well, thank you
All right,
so
thank
much
you
for
very
your
much.
time. We appreciate it, and report. All right, moving along, we've got Holly McLaughlin with our 2024-2026 CBU Strategic Plan presentation. Holly.
Hi, Holly McLaughlin, Communications Manager for CBU. In December, I was here with a draft of CBU's strategic plan for 2024 to 2020 through 2026. Thank you guys so much for all of the input and editing you guys did on that draft. I think the final version that was in this meeting's packet is a really sharp and comprehensive document, and I'm really proud of it. So thank you guys for your input. Thanks to Frank for making it so beautiful. So it's not anything legal. It doesn't need a vote from the board, but it would be great for CBU staff to answer any remaining questions you guys have about the document, and hopefully move forward with just board support and start implementing this plan. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Any questions? All right. Well, since we're not doing a vote, but I mean, I guess we support this plan and appreciate all of your time and effort to put it together for us and our staff, and know this will lead to great things for our utility in the next 3 years and beyond. So,
Thank you, guys.
yay. Thank you. All right, thank you, Holly. Okay, before we move on, I just wanted to welcome Jacqueline Scanlon, an ex officio member. Welcome to the City Utilities Board. That's just fine. We're glad you're here. Okay, so our next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the January 2nd meeting. Are there any questions or corrections? I had one comment. I think at the adjournment, it should have said Parmenter instead of Burnham. That's okay. Hearing no other corrections, do we have a motion to approve the January 2nd minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have the approval of the claims. First, the payable invoices in the amount of $421,614.74. Are there any questions? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Next, we have standard invoices in the amount of $14,984.06. Do we have any questions? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have utility bills in the amount of $25,710.06. Are there any questions? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have wire transfers in the amount of $603,308.37. Are there any questions? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Finally, customer refunds in the amount of $7,925.65. Are there any questions? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have our approval of the consent agenda in the amount of $8,182.10. Chris Wheeler, welcome.
Wheeler City Legal. John asked me to do the consent agenda this evening just in case the board had questions about the presence of these chemical contracts on the consent agenda. There are 20 items on the consent agenda proposed for this evening. The first 2 are not chemical purchase contracts, but the remaining 18 are. And before we get moving on the consent agenda, I wanted to explain that we thought perhaps it would be more efficient for our time with the board if we were to place these chemical contracts on the consent agenda. They do not have an actual dollar amount, so I think they meet the spirit of what we're trying to do with the consent agenda, although it is very likely that each one of these chemical contracts over the course of the year will eventually reach an amount that might exceed what we generally want to see on the consent agenda. But we thought it would still be appropriate to have all of the chemical contracts on the consent agenda. So I'd be happy to try and answer questions about those chemical contracts if anybody would like to discuss them at this time. Otherwise, the 20 items are shown under Section 5 of your agenda this evening for consent. Any questions? Yes.
Yeah, so we'll continue to see the individual claims as we get orders for each of these chemicals, correct?
Correct.
And we never were presented with a set of contracts like this before because it was just decided we're going to do it all at once this time. Is that correct?
That's correct. Last year when the chemical contracts came to the board in chunks, and we would do about 5 and 6 at a time. This year we got them all done at once, and we thought that it might be more efficient to do it through the consent agenda. And as you're stating, for each week that purchases are made, they'll go into invoicing, and you will see them for approval of claims and invoices at that time.
Are the companies locked into those rates?
Correct.
Okay.
For 1 year. They are required under the contract to provide the chemical in that particular contract at the rate that's shown in the contract. There isn't any there's no movement up or down. So we both take a little bit of risk. So if the market were to drop out, we would still be paying that amount. But if the market improved, they still have to sell it to us at that same amount.
Thank you.
Would anybody like to remove any of the items on the consent agenda at this time? Hearing none, then, if there is no objection to the consent agenda, the consent agenda will be approved as presented in the board's regular meeting agenda for Section 5. Yeah, the consent agenda is hereby approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Moving on, we have a request for approval to write off unclaimed credit balances. Matt Havey.
At the beginning of every year, we go through our old accounts payable and receivables, and we do an analysis on credits that have been unclaimed by customers that are over 7 years old. And so at the beginning of every year, we ask to break those off to clean up our books. And I understand there's some questions about this year's list. So what I can do is I can take it away to document our process a little better and to come back and be able to talk more about what we actually did to try to collect this, since there are some familiar accounts on the list, if that would be okay.
Yes, thank you. Just absolutely to know the process would be helpful for all of us.
That's no problem. Go ahead.
And I just had a question, because I know we changed a lot of things with our hydrant
Thank you.
metering program. There's a lot on here for hydrant meters. So are they, is it that they have not returned them, or?
It's the old process. They return the hydrant meters, but we just changed how we go about doing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That was my primary question.
Okay.
Any other questions for Matt?
Do you need us to
So
go
then
knock on
we
doors?
would-
Because I know a lot of the names
know.
on here.
It might be.
Or is there a way to, publicly post the list, just like Indiana Unclaimed or something, I
talking
got
about it, I don't know,
$8
so.
here. But some of them, $70 or more, or, every dollar is important to folks. And so, especially when we know the people and departments in our community.
And, yeah,
We
there's
should be
new
able to
people,
get that back to them.
And then it looked like the process was pretty dated, so we could take a look at kind of revamping the whole,
Yeah, thank
the
you.
whole way that we
Even
look
if
at
it was like a Facebook post, because I'm sure everybody would be tagging underneath,
Mm-hmm.
oh, there you are, get your $9. Yeah, so you're owed, right? You get the money
yeah,
back.
right.
So I think people would appreciate that extra effort. Thank you.
Take that away.
So we'll, do we move to, Chris, how do we proceed with that?
Well, the staff was requesting that the board.
Thank you.
Hi, Chris Wheeler, City Legal. The staff, as I understand it, is requesting that you approve these write-offs, but it doesn't sound like the board's ready to approve these write-offs, so you would want to table this
Okay.
until the next meeting or some subsequent meeting.
Okay. And
So if you
Matt-
can- if you
Matt
could-
said he would get back with us.
Yep.
So do we have a motion to table this discussion until our next meeting?
I move that we table the discussion of the unclaimed items until next meeting. I don't know the date of the meeting, but
And the next regular meeting?
next
And a
regular
second?
meeting.
Second?
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so this motion will be tabled, and thank you for reporting back to us next time.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, please.
So I understand we do want to give everyone the fair opportunity to be notified. So we need to find some equitable solution to do that. At the same time, I think after 7 years, you have people that have moved from town, and it would be difficult to find them. And there's other people on the list, obviously, that we recognized, entities, Indiana University, et cetera. So I think finding that new approach that would allow us to fairly identify the entities that are easily identified and get them their money, and fairly not spend their time and resources for people who are no longer live here. So that would be the challenge. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda, request for approval of consulting services with Commonwealth Engineers for the Dillman Wastewater Treatment Plant Relief Sewer Design. Phil Peden.
Good evening, Phil Peden, Engineering Department. This is for the Dillman Relief Sewer. It's with Commonwealth Engineers. They're also the engineers that completed the sewer modeling for the Dillman Basin and the Blucher Basin. So they're very well aware of the capacity needs that we have in this basin. Jeremy Hardy is here tonight with us. He's their project manager if you have any questions that I can't answer. But this contract is for $1,663,956. This contract covers the design, geotechnical, survey, wetland delineation, tree inventory, easements, environmental review, permitting, bidding, and construction assistance. So I wanted to list those because we have a lot of contracts where we come to the board and then later we come back and we amend because we're going to add some things. And this one contains pretty much everything. There's still going to be construction administration that's separate. We've received that direction from the controller's office to separate that out from our engineering contract. So that will come along later, but this does have some construction assistance, but is very thorough, robust, and I think very detailed in what we'll need for this contract. So I just wanted to make the board aware of that. As part of this, we are trying to eliminate a sanitary sewer overflow that's been occurring there and a need for capacity. But also, this schedule is being accelerated because of a new development on the old Sudbury Farm, which is, if you're not aware of where that's at, it's north of Tapp Road and east of Weimer Road. And it's about 100 acres site being developed by what is called the Summit Development. They're proposing approximately 5,000 new dwelling units there, which equates to about 1.3 million gallons a day in dry weather and almost 6 million gallons a day in wet weather. So we're trying to make sure we are moving along in good faith to have the capacity in our system to receive that so that the sewer flows do not increase in frequency and quantity. So this is an effort to do that. We did have this in the CIP for engineering, but we did not have construction until later down the road, but we're accelerating that to try to get this in ahead of the majority of that development being built and occupied. So we want to make sure, let's see, what was my next note here? We've passed along this information to the Summit Development and in a technical memorandum from Commonwealth that detailed their capacity and what capacity they're using for the new relief sewer, and they will be responsible for paying their share of that capacity that they're taking up. And so that's all been broken down by basin, by section of sewer, because we have some that receives the east fork, the central fork, and the west fork of the sewer system. We have another section that needs upsized to handle their flow that's only central fork, west fork. We have another section that's only west fork. All those were separately broke down by their percentage, which based on their current units is 9.7%, 11.2%, and 25%. So those costs will be passed along to them. I want the board to understand that because in the next month or so, we're going to come forward with an MOU that details that agreement to where they're going to pay their share of the total project cost, including the engineering, which is this contract. And then subsequent developments in these same basins would also fall under the same criteria and the same equation to determine what their percentages are and what they would pay towards the project cost to cover their capacity. So it should be equal to whatever their flows are. They're not paying additional, it's only their flows. And this just covers the collection system cost. They'll still have their sewer connection fee, which we've renamed, but that covers the costs that are used for treatment plant improvements to receive their flow, because of course 6 million gallons a day was going to also require some improvements there. So I think, I was just checking my notes, I think that covers everything I had on my notes. The MOU, of course, will come forward with the board. They have to have the MOU at least in draft format to go in front of the Plan Commission. And so, oh, Jackie's here, so she could comment on that. But we need to have at least a draft MOU to go, so they can go in front of the Plan Commission. It will still be contingent upon us, the Utility Service Board, approving that MOU for them to move forward with their development. Any questions?
Just a comment. You know, we've done this in North Dunn. We did it with the new hospital. We did it at the big Kmart development. I'm happy we're doing it here. I like the approach. It makes sense. It seems fair. What's the minimum size of a development that we'd actually do this for?
That's a good question. It would be nice to probably set that so that we have from a staff perspective, to decide what we're willing to incur. You know, right now, if I had to sign a waste load allocation letter to IDEM, which is any sewer extension or any substantial increase in flow, I would think that would trigger it. But I think we should probably determine what that is from a staff and make a decision. I don't have that right now.
Can you talk a little more about the letter and what triggers that, or is there a limit to that, a minimum limit to that?
Yeah, so every new development that comes forward that's going to extend the sanitary sewer, they're required to submit an IDEM application, and within that, one of the pages of that documentation is the waste load allocation letter, where they show what flows they're going to produce and what effluent their development's going to have, and then we have to agree that it will not increase any or cause any overflows, and we have to sign off on that. So if we agree to that exact flow that they're going to send to our system.
Would an infill like Kmart or something on North Dunn trigger such a letter, or because there's no real extension, is it not applicable?
Those are tricky. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes those go through pre-treatment, and we see it that way. And of course, we review those now to make sure through our plan review process. We want to make sure that we're seeing, because what we're seeing is sites that are being redeveloped that are increasing in density, so that the sewer, and like you're saying, the sewer is already there, but then Brownstone Terrace is a good one, the standard on the north side of Bloomington, it increased 3 to 4 times what the old apartments had there, so that one did actually have a sanitary sewer application, but on that one, they were required to increase pipe sizes in Walnut Street from 8-inch to 15-inch. So we're still catching those. But generally, the item application is the best trigger.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes,
Comment, I don't know if that's the.
go for it.
This is the
Yes,
right time.
please.
Okay, thank you. The project is 140 acres, so just, I don't know if
Okay.
that matters for this group, if anyone's taking notes, so slightly larger. And so, yeah, we want to make sure before it goes through to planning commission and then on to council, makes the ultimate decision, that everything that needs to be squared away with CBU has kind of a roadmap. So as Phil talked about, having that draft MOU would be helpful. The technical final revision deadline for February, which they may or may not be going to, we're waiting on some other items as well, is the end of the month, is the 29th. So that would be ideal. The meeting is until the 12th of February if we needed extra time. Again, they are waiting on some things like related to their traffic study, for example, so we don't know that they'll be prepared, but we're glad and grateful that both things are kind of moving along so that we can hopefully have them done sooner rather than later. Thanks.
And I didn't comment on the scope, but it is in the documentation here, or the schedule, I should say. The bid phase, where we would get out the bid and then award the contract, is August and September of 2025. So it takes quite some time to do all this background information I described, what Commonwealth was going to do ahead of completing the design and having it ready to bid. So it'd be September of 2025. Construction would start October and then wouldn't probably end until March of 2027,
All right, thank you.
which coincides pretty close to when they're hoping to have the first units available, I think.
I would just emphasize Jeff's point of maybe, and you agreed, that we need to have a schedule of, okay, if we have this many, people going to live in this project, then it automatically is going to, trigger this step that comes next. So, yeah, thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the approval of consulting services with Commonwealth Engineers for the Dillman Wastewater Treatment Plant Relief Sewer Design?
So moved.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have a request for approval of a professional service contract with Greeley and Hansen LLC for NPDES permit renewal. Kat Sager.
Hello, Kat Zager, Environmental Assistant Director. This is for a professional service contract with Greeley and Hansen for the NPDES permit renewals for both Blucher and Dillman. This is for assistance on those renewals. I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions for Kat? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Kat. I think that's
Thank
about
you.
your shortest time up here lately, so thank you. All right, next we've got a request for approval of change order number 4 for solids dewatering improvements project at Monroe Water Treatment Plant with Mitch and Stark Construction, Inc. Dan Hudson, welcome.
Hi, I'm Dan Hudson, the Capital Project Manager for the City of Bloomington Utility. I'm requesting a change order for Mitchell and Stark contract for the solids dewatering improvement at Monroe Water Treatment Plant. It's basically just a time extension from late February to late March to allow for back ordering of aluminum material for the job. There's no cost increase on the job, and I'm open to questions if you have them.
Any questions for Dan? All right, hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving on, request for approval of an MOU between the City of Bloomington Utilities and Indiana University for the Clear Creek Culvert Renovation Project. Jane Fleeg, welcome.
Jane Fleeg, Utilities Engineer for the record. This actually was prepared by Chris Wheeler. Chris has spent an enormous amount of time obtaining these easements from IU. There are 5 in total. 2 of them will be permanent, 3 will be temporary. There are drawings included with this MOU, so you can see what we're talking about. But ultimately, the MOU is put together to make sure that we have an understanding of the compensation for these easements. We appraised the property values, and we had come up with about $921,000 for the property value. We are extending the Clear Creek culvert to the east and realigning it, which will help their IU's property. And so that portion of it is being funded by IU, and that comes up to about $543,000. So ultimately, we are looking at paying IU the difference between those two, which is $378,039. So this MOU is to put that into a complete understanding between our board and IU so that we can move forward with this project. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Jane? Sorry.
Talking to me?
Or have you talked to anyone about whether or not it requires a grading permit?
I have not talked to anyone about.
If it's all IU trustees, we can look at that. I was just curious if we'd already determined. Thanks.
We have not. We have submitted to city engineering for the right-of-way permits, but I would have to look into a grading permit.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, Amanda.
So this is the project that's taking place behind the Von Lee and
Correct.
whatnot. And I know that we've had conversations and presentations from individuals at IU regarding access and all that. Is this going to impede or help or have no impact on that aspect of the project?
Well, the previous concerns that came forward were from the Von Lee, managers of the Von Lee property, and IU rents property there, rents space from them. This MOU, if you'll notice, the last paragraph does indicate that we will help if there is need for or actual costs and expenses associated with reasonable accommodations for ADA compliance, because the only ADA entrance into that building is off the alley, and it's physically impossible to keep that open. So if there are any IU employees or visitors or whatever accommodations need to be made for the second and third floor of the building, then that would be covered. We do not have any kind of claims yet. We don't have any known expenses, but that was put in here just in case something does come up. The timing of when that will happen is still a little bit uncertain. We have an idea of the months that it will happen, but after we get a contractor on there and get going, then we'll have a better idea of the times, and then you can let us know if there are any issues with their access to that building.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And to clarify that point, then, so the only renters of that building on the second and third floors where the ADA access would be blocked, the only renter is IU.
That is my understanding.
And so we're directly doing this MOU with them, which should alleviate the building owner's concerns because their tenant has an MOU with the CBU.
In terms of the accessible entrance, yes.
Yes.
The other renters are the two restaurants, the.
Front access.
And they have
Okay.
front access, and those are accessible.
Yes.
The trash pickup is also off the backside of the building, and we are still working on that issue. Again, there's nothing that we can do to keep access to the back of that building based on where the culvert is located. So we are continuing to discuss with them, particularly the property owner. We are still working with that property owner.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for your continued conversations with them about this.
Thank you, Gracie.
Yes, thank you. Was there any other questions? All right. Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the MOU between the City of Bloomington Utilities and Indiana University for the Clear Creek Culvert Renovation Project?
So moved.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on, old business. Anyone have any old business from the board? Old business from staff?
So, I don't think so.
Okay. New business from the board. It was brought to our attention by Jim Sherman that our April 8th meeting is Eclipse Day. Do we want to move that to Tuesday, April 9th? Is that a conflict for anyone?
I don't think so.
Yes?
Both of those days, so
Okay.
either way.
Thank you.
And we might.
Can we Zoom?
You could Zoom in.
I don't need to.
Okay.
I'm just saying if.
If you're not available, you could Zoom in, just like we did with Kirk a few weeks ago.
Are we sure?
Kirk Zoomed
Okay.
in and voted with us
Okay.
last time.
And I'm out of town on the 8th as well.
Okay.
So another reason.
But
to
does the
move to
9th work to
9th works
tentatively
great
put
for
in?
me.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
It's a good idea.
Can't take it credit for it. Thank you, Frank, for, I'm sure you had that thought too.
Because we're all going to be around behind.
Okay. So,
I move that we move the April 8th meeting to April 9th, 2024, due to the solar eclipse and the anticipated population increase for the day.
okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, I don't know if we needed an official vote, but it's official now, so our April 8th meeting will be on April 9th. Thank you. Any other new business from the board? All right, new business from staff.
No new business.
Subcommittee reports. We had our property and planning subcommittee meeting tonight. Kirk White's our chair. He's not here with us at this meeting. Jeff, would you like to give us a report from that?
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So the report from that meeting was basically we had Phil Peden, engineering, gave us a overview of the initial activities by Kreider and Kreider for the site remediation, site clearing work that's being done there, as well as the timeline for the architectural plans that are being drawn up with the 50% design expected in March. Then James Hall T&D gave us a presentation regarding the recent history of the fill disposal at the site, primarily from utilities itself, but also some fill from other city departments. And we had a good conversation about the implications of those activities. There were no votes, no decisions made, rather it was an informational presentation.
Thank you. Anything else to add from that? Anybody? All right, thank you for that report. Staff reports.
A couple items. We have a new purchasing manager, Jose Fuentes, sitting back there at the corner at the time. So he's been here since week 2.
Welcome.
And then James wants to give an update on something that's going on in Monroe.
So, Hector and I'll give the bulk of it, but just to kind of keep you informed so you guys know kind of what's going on. We had an issue 2 weekends ago.
Yeah, two.
A Saturday out at Monroe Water Treatment Plant. We have a chemical building, and then we have the main building. And there are 6 chlorine lines that come out of that building, a primary and a backup, for 3 different locations where chlorine is applied to the water. We had the primary line was leaking and was coming up through the pavement out there. And then the backup line was having some issues as well. T&D went out to try to expose the line and try to find where it was at. We come to find out they encased those lines in the ground in concrete, and they're PVC lines, the chlorine ones are. And so they're not easily to find and to get to. The chlorine levels as we were digging around was getting too high, and it wasn't safe for us to be in there. So we've kind of stopped that. The backup line is not working, but we found a new place that meets compliance and gives us disinfection to apply chlorine. The lines that weren't working is what we used to call top of filter, right before it would go through the filter. We found a little further back in the process a place to add chlorine that's working for us currently. When it gets warmer, it won't meet those needs. And so this is a big project that Phil's team is working on anyway to redo the chemical lines. You've heard Dan talk about this project a lot. And currently, we're working with that engineering firm to try to figure out a material, a piping material that we may be able to get in a single roll that T&D can lay as a temporary in the ground and hire a contractor to hook it up inside both buildings until Phil's project can, be kicked off at the end of this year. But the plan is functioning fine, is running fine. We just kind of had a scare on what we were going to do, and Hector and his team kind of found a place to get the chlorine, and T&D kind of looked at it and tried to assess it, but we weren't able to fix it then. But we think we will be able to get a temporary fix in there and to get us by until the full project can kick off. But we just wanted to bring that to you and make that make you
Thank
aware
you.
of that. So,
Thank you to both of you and your teams for this quick work to get it back working correct, or get a temporary plan in place. What's our timeline on this temporary situation, the pipe that you're looking into to get us by until December or whenever Phil's project begins?
Well, we're just waiting on the engineers to kind
Okay.
of tell us if there is a material out there. Because what we'd like to do is, if we're going to dig a because right now, the lines that are in the ground, the project that put the chemical lines in the ground was around 2000, and they're not in any kind of casing or anything. So you have the chlorine lines, you have the ammonia lines, and you have the caustic lines. And then there's a fluoride line somewhere in there, all within this concrete slab, basically. What we could do fairly, because they're small, like the chlorine lines in particular are 1-inch lines. If we dug a 3 or 4 inch trench like we're doing on a water main replacement, it wouldn't take us long the distance that we have to go. We could put a 6-inch pipe in the ground and put those 1 inch or a 4 inch and put those 1-inch lines inside those. And we could easily do that with the other chemicals too. We're looking at if we can get the piping to do that for the other chemicals. And then also cost, does it exponentially increase the cost to do that? Do we just do the chlorine because of the cost, having a contractor hook it up inside and outside the building? So those are some of the things we're looking at. We're trying to move as fast as possible. Once those things are figured out from the material standpoint, it wouldn't take T&D more than a week to kind of to do that kind of dig and placement. It's the contractor hooking it up. I'm not sure on that yet, but we're looking into those things and trying to get ahead of it. So once we get a material, I don't know how long that material may take to get ordered and sent to us, but we're hoping, that to move as fast as we can, and we're trying to get things planned out so that when we're ready, or when the material gets here, we're ready to move.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Other questions from the board? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other staff reports? Okay, thank you. And welcome, Jose. Yes. All right. Any other petitions or communications? Okay, hearing none. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.